So, you'd like to improve your golf. That's fine, and I know I can help you. Improving your shots is just one way of increasing your pleasure in the game. But never lose sight of one thing. While golf is a splendid exercise, and the course offers a haven from the stress and cares of modern living, the main reward of the game is enjoyment, the conviviality of good companions, the thrill of competition, and something else almost peculiar to golf, the satisfaction you get from every single good shot you pull out of the bag. I've been playing since I was 2 years old, when my father stuck a specially tailored club in my hands and turned me loose. I've played just about everywhere where golf courses have been built, and under almost every conceivable condition. You'd think I'd be a bit jaded by now, but I can truthfully say I'm not in the slightest. In fact, I think I enjoy the game more now than ever before. And that, I'm sure, goes for every other top professional. I doubt if the greatest hitter in baseball gets more kick out of a home run with the bases loaded than I still get from a long, true drive, a difficult recovery shot, or a tricky putt that finds the hole. Golf is that kind of a game to me, and every professional. And I think that's the reason I can play day after day, month after month, year after year, against the toughest competition and under the sternest conditions, and still get many thrills, and the biggest thrill of all from actually winning than from the all-important prize money. You can enjoy golf the same way, since it is the only important game I know in which a handicap makes all men equal. Properly handicapped, a beginner can play a professional with an even chance, and you can't say that about any other sport I can think of. Of course, the better you play, the more kicks you'll get out of the game. Let's start to improve your play right now by getting down to basics. You can't play good golf without a good grip, one that gives you control over the club and a sense of power, as well as a feel, a sense of communication between you and the club, a sense of complete coordination between the hands that transmits full power to the club head. I use the so-called baseball grip, but the one most commonly employed is the overlapping grip, originated a good many years ago by the great Harry Vardon. I'll tell you about both these grips and their advantages. You can try them both and adopt whichever one seems best to fit your individual needs. Take your driver, or any wood, and place its sole on the ground with the face square to the line of flight. Then, with the back of the left hand facing the direction of flight, place that hand under the grip section of the shaft, with about ½ an inch of the shaft extending beyond the heel of the hand. The left-hand grip is a combination finger and palm grip. The club will lie across the middle joint of the index finger and extend upward into the palm, barely touching the little finger. The pressure point of the left-hand grip is in the last 3 fingers. Now close the fingers around the shaft, with the thumb extending down the shaft and the V formed by thumb and forefinger pointing over your right shoulder. Still holding on with the left hand, put your right hand on the club as though you were shaking hands with it. The little finger of the right hand will overlap the index finger of the left. Close your right hand with the thumb firmly on the shaft in such a manner that the V formed by the thumb and index finger of the right hand also points to the right shoulder. This grip can be altered slightly to make it feel more comfortable. The so-called baseball grip, which I use, isn't really that at all, because the left thumb still remains on the shaft, as described for the overlapping grip. As a matter of fact, the entire left hand remains exactly as it was. The only difference is that the little finger of the right hand does not overlap the index finger of the left, but is put on the club. As professionals, we refer to the grip as the 10-finger grip, or unlapped grip. I have used this grip all my life. I started playing golf at an early age when my hands were very small. My hands have remained relatively small, and therefore I have never had the ability to control the club head with the overlapping grip. I feel that my grip is beneficial to anyone having small or weak hands. This means it should help about 95% of the women, as well as a great many men playing golf today. The stance, or setup, is the most important single thing in golf, to my way of thinking. It is the foundation on which the swing is built, the very basis of good golf. If the setup is good, you will have a feeling of perfect balance, a sense of security, so to speak. Since the proper stance permits your hips and shoulders to turn freely, your swing will be easier to groove. Having your feet soundly planted will make it easier to perfect your timing and coordination and enable you to hit solidly through the ball at impact. Stand facing the ball with your club, and I think you should use a driver or other wood for this lesson. So the club head reaches the ball comfortably, with your hands hanging naturally from your shoulders as you bend slightly forward from the hips. Set your feet with your toes slightly turned out, about as wide apart as your shoulders, and in a line parallel to the line of flight. The ball should be slightly towards your left foot. Too wide a stance will make it impossible to complete your turn away from the ball, destroying any chance of grooving the arc of your swing. Facing the ball squarely with both feet is what is known as a square stance. If you withdraw your right foot slightly from the line, your body will turn slightly to the right, and you will be in what we call a closed stance. If you bring your left foot farther back than your right from the line of flight, you will be facing more toward the target and will have assumed what is known as an open stance. All three stances have their uses. Starting with the drive, the stance should be ever so slightly closed. As we proceed to the fairway woods and on to the iron clubs, the stance will become more and more open as the clubs become shorter and shorter. I personally use an open stance for all shots, as I believe it is easier to get through the ball by doing this. However, the stance will vary with each individual. The most important thing to remember about the stance is be comfortable. For the moment, assume the square stance. When you have done that, we come to a most important phase of the stance, one that often is overlooked by the beginner. It is what we pros term sitting down to the ball. Sitting down to the ball consists of flexing the knees slightly, not flabby, but relaxed, and with your weight slightly back on your heels. Once you have settled comfortably into this position, it should give you a feeling of solidity, of being well anchored to the ground. When you get that feeling, you're ready to make the shot. The basic idea in most golf shots, and especially the drive, is to get the club head in a controlled arc so it will strike the ball as it reaches maximum speed. Assume the proper grip and stand with the club head just behind the ball, with its face square to the line of flight. The swing can be broken down into three phases for the purpose of instruction: the backswing, downswing, and follow through. But in use, all three phases should be coordinated into one smooth, flowing motion. You start the backswing smooth and low, with the hips pivoting to the right and the weight shifting automatically to the right foot. Make it a sweeping movement. Keep the left arm straight but not rigid. Keep both elbows close to the body. Don't bend the wrists until they have reached your waistline. Bending them too soon interrupts the flowing continuity of the swing, disrupts that unbroken rhythm you must have for good driving. Don't let the club dip much below the horizontal at the top of the backswing, and don't loosen the grip, but let the hands and fingers maintain control without tightness or tenseness throughout, particularly at the top of the swing. The club head pauses for the merest instant at the top of the swing as your wrists cock, but the smooth flowing motion should not be interrupted. During the momentary pause at the top of the swing, the body should start unwinding for the downswing. The hips should be rotated to the left, and the weight will shift back to the left foot in coordination with the swing. As the body rotates, the left arm, still straight but not rigid, and elbow in close, pulls the club down and through the ball. The right arm is right along in the swing, but it is guiding rather than propelling. The wrists should not uncock until they reach the hitting area, which is always below the waistline. Then they should snap into action, giving the club head added impetus as it contacts the ball. The hitting area varies with each individual, but great drivers, like great knockout artists in the ring, throw their Sunday punches only a short distance. It is folly to think that the Sunday golfer should have the same hitting area as the professional. After the ball is hit, the swing should continue in the same fluid motion until the hands are high and the hips face the target. If you've done it right, the club will have contacted the ball at exactly the moment of greatest speed. A few things never to forget about driving are: keep the left arm straight but not rigid, keep the elbows close to the body at all times, keep your grip in control of the club at all times but without tenseness or tightness. And one more thing, the oldest piece of advice ever given to a golfer: keep your eye on the ball until after it has been hit. Remember, if you can't see it, you can't hit it correctly. There are two very important things to remember about playing woods from the fairway. First, you must be sure your lie is good enough for an almost straight-face club to do the job of getting the ball properly into flight. And you must get the ball into flight with the same smooth, easy swing you used for the drive off the tee, and never, never attempt to lift it or scoop it up. This can only result in disaster. Let the natural loft of the club do the job of getting the ball off the ground and into the desired flight. Sometimes a slight bit of turf should be taken after the ball is contacted. Naturally, that will be determined by the lie of the ball on the fairway. The ball should be played from approximately the same position as on the drive. Also, remember that the brassy, or number 2 wood, is a very difficult club to use from the fairway because of the lack of loft. Many an average player has prospered from the addition of a number 5 wood to his set and the elimination of the number 2 wood. There is one fundamental difference between the drive and iron shots. In driving, the ball is hit an ascending or upward blow. All irons should be hit with a downward or descending blow, in which the lowest point of your swing is ahead of the ball itself. With an iron, the blade should nip the turf after it has hit the ball. To aid in this, the hand should be slightly ahead of the club head and stay that way even after impact. If your divot is ahead of where the ball originally rested, you have hit this shot properly. The big problem with irons is accuracy, and with them you must not only be accurate as to the line of flight, but also as to distance. To achieve accuracy, you must employ a more upright, compact swing. Cut down a bit on body action. Let the hands and arms play a bigger part in the swing. The hip turn decreases in proportion to the length of the shot. Take a slightly more upright stance with a wee bit more weight on the left foot. The ball should be placed slightly more toward the right foot than in wood shots. The placement of the ball continues backward toward the right foot as the loft of the iron employed increases. In other words, the ball will be slightly ahead of the right foot when you are hitting a number 9 iron. The stance will become more and more open as the loft of the iron increases. Therefore, you will be facing more toward the hole when you are hitting a number 9 iron than when you are hitting a number 5 iron. The left arm should pull downward, and as the wrists uncock well below the waistline, you should get the feeling that the right arm is chasing the left, trying to catch up with it. If your line of flight proves inaccurate, it usually indicates your hands have lost control, and the club face has not been at precise right angle to the line of flight at the moment of contact. The force of the club head hitting the ball will turn the face of an iron much more easily than it will the face of a wood. If the ball goes to the right, the face of the club has remained open. Your right hand has not done its job. Keep your swing smooth and sleek, but more compact and upright. Keep control of your grip throughout and your elbows, particularly your left elbow, close to the body. Hit the ball firmly and don't attempt to baby the shot, but don't try to knock the cover off either. If you've picked the right club for the distance and hit the ball properly, it will do most of the work. There's an iron made for each shot up to about 190 yards. Be sure to use the iron designed for the distance you require. As the clubs you use become shorter in length, it is perfectly natural that you have a tendency to reach for the ball. The way to correct this is to bend slightly more from the waist and flex the knees a little more. Also, as the clubs become shorter, the body turn becomes smaller, and the hands do more and more of the work. As always, try to keep your swing smooth and grooved, and whatever you do, don't try to punch or lift the ball. As I said before, the loft of the club will take care of that. When you enter the so-called scoring zone, the two shots you will encounter most will be the pitch and the chip. First, let's talk about the pitch. This shot is played with either a number 9 iron or a pitching iron. The stance is very open, with the ball being played well toward the right foot. The club face at address is always open, giving an impression that the ball might go to the right. To compensate for this, the arc of the swing should be somewhat more outside in. That is to say, you almost feel the sensation of cutting across the ball from the outside to the inside. I have found that if the left hand is placed slightly more underneath the club than usual, the job of keeping the club face open and getting the ball in the air quickly becomes easier. Again, the ball is always struck a descending blow so that the desired backspin is imparted. The loft of the club must be used to get the ball into the air. Never, never try to lift the ball into the air. This removes all chance of getting spin on the ball and will result in many more top shots. The pitch is used mostly when you are going over a sand trap or to an elevated green, and always when it is necessary to make the ball stop quickly. Now, the chip shot. This can be played with any club from a number 4 iron to a number 9 iron. This shot also is played by hitting the ball a descending blow. I believe you will have the most success in chipping by addressing the ball with an open stance, with your hand slightly ahead of the ball, so the face of the club will be slightly closed. Therefore, the average player should take a more lofted club than he is used to chipping with. This may be slightly hard to understand, so let me explain. Because the hands are ahead of the ball, the normal loft of a club will be decreased. Also, when hitting the ball a descending blow, the flight of the ball will be lower. Always try to make the ball take its first bounce on the putting surface. In other words, take a club which will clear the fringe of the green and enable your chip shot to react more uniformly. Another important thing about chipping is to always hit the ball with the club head accelerating or picking up speed. This will eliminate the tendency to baby the chip shot, which is by far the biggest fault the average golfer has with this type of approach. This can be done by shortening the backswing and making sure your wrists remain firm throughout the shot. Although the chip shot does not seem difficult, it should be practiced a great deal because more strokes can be saved by its correct execution than by any other stroke in golf. Styles of putting vary more than any other single phase of golf. In watching tournaments, you will notice that no two players look alike in their putting styles. The grip and stance are almost completely different with each player. Many of today's top players, including myself, use the so-called tap stroke in putting. This means that the ball is not stroked or swept with the putter blade. In this stroke, the ball must again be hit with the club head accelerating. There are very, very few good putters who take a real long backswing and then quit at the ball to obtain proper distance. Today's professionals have changed to the tap stroke for two reasons. First, the tremendous pressure exerted by everyday tournament play and the amount of money involved, and secondly, the difference in texture of the grass on the greens in different parts of the country where tournaments are played. An important thing about putting is to be comfortable at address. If the tap stroke doesn't feel comfortable to you, don't feel obligated to use it. The most important thing about putting is having confidence in yourself, and to obtain this confidence, you must feel comfortable. Only you, the individual, knows when that is accomplished. I feel that being able to hit the ball the correct distance is more important than always having the right line. In other words, if you have trouble concentrating on both distance and direction, the distance should receive your major consideration and attention. It's very difficult to tell anyone else how to putt, but I can tell you how important practice is. Almost half the strokes in a game are taken on the green. Through practice, try to perfect a system of putting that is easy for you personally. Then practice and more practice will accomplish more than anything I might be able to tell you. No matter how well you play, sooner or later you're going to be in a sand trap. That's what they're there for. The trick is to get out of them without running up a disastrous score that will ruin an otherwise perfect day. The first thing you must have is the proper club to play out of a sand trap. This club is called a sand wedge and is used exclusively for this shot. Since the sand wedge has been used, it is about 100% easier to get out of a sand trap than it was before. Any average player using a sand wedge can beat a pro out of a sand trap if he has to use a pitching wedge or a 9-iron. The shot is played much the same way as a pitch shot with relation to the grip, stance, and arc of the club. The left hand should be placed underneath the grip a little more than usual, and the stance should be very wide open. The arc of the club is an outside-in or cut-across motion. I have found out that the distance a sand trap shot should go will be determined by the amount of sand taken behind the ball and not by the force of the swing itself. Always try to take the same swing in a sand trap, but vary the distance you hit behind the ball to alter the distance the shot must travel. One final thing any golfer must realize. Golf is more than a matter of swinging a club properly. It is truly a thinking man's game. Sometimes you can think your way out of predicaments that even the finest of shots won't pull you out of when they don't have the proper consideration behind them. And if you think a good game, you won't get in those predicaments in the first place. Let me give you a few tips that you might not have heard previously. First, and one of the most important things, try and warm up slightly before playing a round. The fellow who jumps up from the lunch table, runs in and changes his shoes, and then goes out and joins his foursome, and expects to hit a good drive on the first tee is really kidding himself. Any athlete warms up before he plays, and most of these fellas are playing every day. So the ordinary golfer that plays once or twice a week can do himself a great deal of good by going out and hitting a bucket of balls on the practice range before starting his round. Also, you must learn to play within yourself. That is to say, realize what kind of shots you can hit, and then only try those that you have the confidence in. The golfer who tries to play impossible shots that he might have seen professionals play in tournaments can only get himself in more trouble than he is already in. Using clubs you have confidence in can also help greatly in scoring. Sometimes players will have pet clubs to chip with or pitch with. Those should be used as much as possible, as confidence makes you hit the ball much better. One little thing on reading the greens might help you a great deal. Grain in greens, and all greens do have some kind of grain, whether they be bent, Bermuda, or rye, can be read more properly by knowing which way that grain runs. If you look at a green and see a shiny surface in front of you, you are most always going with the grain. If you see a dull surface, you are going against the grain and therefore must hit the ball much harder to reach the hole. Wind direction will also have a great deal to do with how the grain runs in greens. If you know the predominating wind at your golf course, again, you must always realize that the grain will run with the wind in almost every case. Also, if you test the wind direction before starting a round, you will be able to play your shots much better, and you will know which way that wind is blowing, even though it may be blowing in circles in the hole you are playing. One little thing which might save you a few strokes during the year is something I learned when I first turned professional and saw some of the top players playing very important final rounds. They almost always tee the ball up on the teeing area, or where you drive, near the trouble or out of bounds. In other words, you are in this way shooting away from the out of bounds and will not put it out of bounds or in trouble nearly as much as if you tee away from it and are shooting towards it. One of the cardinal sins that I have observed in watching amateurs play is that 95% of them will never use enough club. They always come up with a club that if they hit perfectly will reach the hole. But so many shots are hit with an imperfect swing that enough club should be used so that a little mistake will not hurt the shot as much as if you use a club that will reach the target only when you hit it perfectly. In closing, another very important thing in playing golf is to use the proper equipment. Many of our leading manufacturers have gone into the golf club business lately and all put out a very good product. Your professional can help you a great deal in selecting the set of clubs that is proper for you.